we'll see if the Wizard of Oz will call him throughout the weekend. Oh, the Wizard of Oz comes through already.
There you go. Behind the curtain, we'll pull it back.
That's right. Thank you, Jay. Nice work. This is going to go smoothly. So as I said, we're gonna treat this test as a chance to talk a little bit about the event coming up this weekend. It's Friday, April 23rd through Saturday, April 24th. Starts in the afternoon, about 5. I think it's 6 p.m. If you go on to the schedule, you'll notice that. Let's take a quick look. 6 p.m. is when opening remarks officially start on April 23rd. That's when everyone will be logging into Discord, which is the primary platform that we are using to connect the virtual Startup Weekend experience. Moving into a keynote kickoff, we'll hear from Nico from Speako. I mean, what a company name that connects to my good friend Nico's first name. This is a remarkable story. Nico's entrepreneurial journey actually began in a Startup Weekend environment, and pitch competitions, company development, platform launch later. He is leading a team, and it's going to be a story you'll want to tune into for sure. But from there, we get to work. A chance to kind of synthesize all those ideas that have already been floating around the Discord environment and allowing our participants to team up, do a little networking to determine who they'd like to work with for the next 24 hours, and then diving in, starting to build. We'll have the support of some early opportunities to connect with mentors, looking about team dynamics, how to work together and not clone yourself, leaning into each other's passions and skill sets. We'll follow that up with research and testing, supporting the teams as they're building, knowing that it's important to understand the landscape that they're working within, testing that business idea, looking at business model development. And then pretty early on, towards the end of Friday night around 10 p.m., we're going to dive into marketing, right? How are we going to tell our story? How are we going to share what we're up to? And even some late night check-ins. We're not suggesting that you have to stay up all night, but we are going to check in at midnight and again at 2 a.m. in case we've got some night owls who decide to turn up the EDM and build a little harder throughout the evening hours. Then I'm just kind of naturally going through the schedule, talking about the caffeinated conversations to open things up Saturday morning, bright and early, kind of an optional chance for people to wake up 7 to 8 a.m. on Saturday, April 24th, knowing that we're going to kind of get things officially started with some opening remarks there at 8 o'clock, and revisiting marketing, knowing this is an important thing to fire up Saturday morning, having a keynote speaker, looking at some exciting surprise guest participation there, leaning into sales from a mentoring perspective, giving some time for lunch, looking at pitch practice, making sure all of our slide decks are organized for each of our teams. And then along with the teams, the mentors, we have a really remarkable panel of judges that will join us for our virtual demo day. And so that's going to be public. 7 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, the 24th, is when you'll be able to tune in and hear how the teams have collaborated to build something that they now care about, with some awards and an optional after party as well. So that is a quick rundown of our schedule. Jay, thank you for highlighting that as I've been talking.
Ben, if you were a Chamber of Commerce director or say an economic developer, how would you connect in, and where would you go to connect in just to be a viewer? How would you get connected there?
So Frank, great question, right? How would someone in economic development, an entrepreneurial ecosystem builder, a startup community builder, someone who just simply cares about their community and wants to support entrepreneurs? Look, it's not one thing. This is a pinwheel of actors all sorts of factors that together, those dotted lines connect in order to really activate the business environment that can help support the center. As you see in this graphic, entrepreneurs. As long as the focus always remains on that entrepreneur, does this support? Does this educate? Does this connect? Does this accelerate an entrepreneur? If the answer is yes, that positive sum mentality of if you win, we win mindset means that you really have to do a lot of different things, and everyone does some things. The awareness so that we're not tripping over each other, especially in larger ecosystems, is an important element of like assessment and mapping an ecosystem. But in smaller environments, it's much easier, right? There's just a lot more opportunity to thrive by doing more. And so what you see on the screen here is a fun little visual to identify what is a very common look at a lot of different ecosystems. On the outside, there is some common actors, right? When we think about Frank's business, right, we've got service providers, but he also acts as an advisor and mentors, coaching, and maybe even investors. Nearby, you've got the K through 12 environment. You've got the universities nearby. These are all examples of actors within an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And the more that they are aware of each other's work, the more that they can do, what they are up to, but it connects to other folks. And so when you think about Startup Weekend, it's one of these puzzle pieces that allows a lot of different actors around the ecosystem to come together and support the entrepreneur in this like moment of hackathon. Let's build together. And whether or not the company emerges and expands outside of the weekend is less important as the experience of allowing entrepreneurs to explore how to build like a startup, how to connect with mentors, vice versa, mentors, how to work with entrepreneurs. And as you might imagine, you come out of these environments connected. And so it's just like one more thing on a building block of activity. And we're excited about the opportunity of uniting Iowa with this virtual environment where it doesn't matter where you're from, but also knowing that this statewide initiative connects to perhaps more future in-person gatherings. We've had them in Des Moines, we've had them in Iowa City and Cedar Rapids and Cedar Valley, over in Waterloo, Cedar Falls. It's been up in Ames, but there's no reason why, to your point, Frank, an economic development person, a chamber organizer, someone at the county level would not be able to bring this type of experience to their local environment in the future. So a lot of easy ways to connect, but also knowing that there's some neat opportunities to facilitate this type of experience in the future while staying connected at a statewide level.
Yeah, so I think our biggest success story, I feel like there's at least one or two that come out of every year. Biggest success story I think we've had in 2019, so in Iowa City, we have this program through the university called the Mandela Washington Fellowship. And they bring over entrepreneurs from sub-Saharan Africa to Iowa City for the summer. And they're all working on their own projects. They've got these great ideas that they're learning the business model canvas and how to do entrepreneurship and take that information back and educate people in their home countries. And several of them actually wanted to participate in Startup Weekend Iowa City back in 2019. And just kind of crossing those boundaries, those non-traditional sort of entrepreneurs that and giving them that information, giving them that knowledge to be able to take back to their home countries. I feel like that's been one of our biggest success stories.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's international storyline there, pal. Thank you for sharing it. I also think of Liz Hubing, who's going to be joining us as a mentor from the Iowa City community, and her sharing on the Iowa Breakfast Club last Friday. We talked about hackathon experiences, and Startup Weekend is one example, right? There are other types of formats that are fun. But her company, there are surprises, in case you're wondering, for the top three that really come out of the weekend looking sharp. And she took that and presented at 1 Million Cups and kind of learned a little bit more about building like a startup, which aided her work in the communication side of the Iowa City Economic Development Organization. And so I think to me, it's less about one story and more about like each individual's opportunity of feeling the excitement, connecting to others, understanding the vocabulary, the experience, the energy that goes into this, and almost like getting hooked. Mm-hmm. They're now participating in a variety of different ways, whether that's as an entrepreneur, back as an intrapreneur, as their existing company, into the community side and accelerating other things that are going on around the state, around their local environments. It's just always like another little notch forward. And to me, from like a larger scale, these types of opportunities are special and important. And I get excited when I start seeing people wanting to build ideas into reality together and having these different angles of support in order to make that happen. This is Startup Weekend. Shauna, I've kind of talked the last half hour. We just got done doing our opening remarks and welcoming conversation as Nico prepares to join us for our keynote fireside chat. I thought I would allow you to share a quick introduction of yourself, where you're from, how you spend your time, and how it all connects through Startup Weekend. And then Ian, we'll allow you to do the same.
Awesome. Well, I could not be more excited to be here. I had a chance to be involved in Startup Weekend in the earliest days, actually right when it was founded. Andrew Hyde out of Boulder, and then he ended up selling Startup Weekend to Mark and Clint out of Seattle, and that's when I got involved a bit more. And at first I was a participant. I won a couple events, and then I started mentoring and judging and facilitating, and had a chance to volunteer, facilitate, and launch Startup Weekend programs all over the world, which was really fun. And then I ended up joining after selling my startup that I was at had an exit. And then I joined Startup Weekend as Chief Marketing Officer and launched Startup Women. So I haven't been to a Startup Weekend in several years. So it's like, kind of like back to like the old community of friends. So it's really fun to be here.
I saw your tweet this afternoon, and some of the friends in the Twitter world we're pretty excited to hear that you were dipping the toes, if you will, back into this facilitator role. And any quick words of wisdom, tips from an experienced Startup Weekend participant, facilitator, like in the HQ side of things, thoughts that might accelerate or allow some of our attendees to be inspired, but also learn from your experience?
Well, I think it's kind of an obvious one, but you kind of get out what you put into the weekend. And I have seen really some incredible success stories. I've seen some startup ideas that were acquired at the end of the weekend, and not from big startup events. Sometimes these were smaller events. They just loved the team, wanted to bring the team over, and it happened to be a good fit. What the team was building, it happened to be a good fit with one of the judges or the mentors or somebody involved. I've seen teams acquired after a couple of weeks or months. I had a chance to be early on in the experience of Rover, which is one of the unicorns that came out of Startup Weekend. But mostly what I've seen is people, this is their first or an early shot at really trying out entrepreneurship, and you get hooked. You form these relationships that you might work with later, at another startup. And so I really would encourage everybody, spend, the time allocated here, like jump in and get to know people, and you'll be surprised what you get out of this.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you again for joining us. Our time together will be enjoyable. Ian, I'd love to have you kind of share the same short introduction, and we've got Nico on the line. We've got about 20 minutes together, so I want to lean into a little bit more about what you're doing, and also with your role as a facilitator. Eager to continue working with you throughout this Startup Weekend Iowa online experience. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the for the welcome. And it's such a pleasure. Haven't been involved with Startup Weekend, since the beginning. That's super awesome to hear. I've first organized one in 2015, or helped co-organize one. Was a participant shortly after, so I think I went the opposite direction. And then kind of got the bug of building things and products, whether they took off or not. Ultimately became a facilitator, and I loved traveling on behalf of Startup Weekend and to an extent Techstars. Just seeing the different types of communities involved and what different communities had different problems they're trying to solve was just really interesting for me. From there I went on to work with to co-found a software company that was focused on publishing platforms and data and analytics. We ended up shutting down because we ran out of money, only to find out a month and a half or so later, our competitor ended up getting bought out by Twitter. So that was kind of like a knife in the heart, so to speak. I would go on to help start a food delivery startup. 2 years, for the last 2 years is what I was doing in northern Colorado, called Nosh. We did such a hockey stick during a pandemic. So I was there from our first dollar to within 2 years, we did 10 million in total sales. And then got a little bit burnt out, and now I'm a software engineer for a sticker design app that will be launching in 6 weeks, but I've learned to not hold my breath on tech launch dates. That's kind of my roadmap, so to speak. So.
Very nice. Well, it's great to have you with us, Ian, and thank you, along with your own personal work, some of the things that you've done with Startup Weekend in Iowa City over the years. You mentioned some of the entrepreneurial spirit inside, was juiced originally through a Startup Weekend environment. You mentioned you were in a traditional kind of an entrepreneurial role, or talk a little bit about how Startup Weekend activated, and then the process after Startup Weekend. How did that lead to Speakio?
Yeah, this is an idea that I want to communicate, and if it's something that, if you don't take anything away from tonight or from this conversation, just take away this, and it is, please don't self-reject. There's so many people out there who might tell you no, and there's so many reasons that things become hard to do and hard to execute, but don't make yourself one of those reasons. And for me, I didn't know anything about startups. And my first experience, my first real interest came from a Startup Weekend event just like this. And it was in Cedar Rapids. I think it was back in 2014. And it was this cold winter night. And I saw some kind of a thing about it online. I wasn't really sure what it was all about. And I ended up just showing up. I didn't know anyone. I felt like everyone else knew each other. Turns out a lot of other people didn't know each other. And for me, it was a real scary experience. It's scary to show up. But you know what? I decided I can't hold myself back here. So I went for it. And I showed up, learned a lot about startups, what it is to build something called a minimum viable product. I mean, I had no idea what any of this meant. And as the night went on, just like we're doing right now, we started pitching ideas. People started to get a little bit more comfortable with each other. And I really hope we're able to foster that kind of an environment, that kind of an energy here tonight. And next thing you know it, I'm up there pitching an idea for a startup called Born Ready. And it was this idea around how can we make houses safer for kids who are maybe they could get hurt by something in the house. It's this process called childproofing. It's a super niche problem, but it was an idea that I just put out there. And no one really joined my team. So I wasn't sure what to do, but I had maybe enough support to go on to the next round, to the next day. And so I showed up the next day and I didn't have a team. So I just started working on it. And eventually I called a friend over who came up and came to the event with me. Another person showed up, and it started snowballing from there. And the point is, sometimes it just takes that snowflake, right? That idea, that seed of an idea, to get something going. And just started going with it, and we started building. We started talking to some of the mentors about, okay, how does this work? We have to talk to customers. What does that mean? Who is a customer versus a user? So all these questions that you then encounter, and that's really where a lot of this learning comes from. And through that process, through this weekend, Saturday, we worked hard. We were there all night working hard on this because we were starting to groove on it. We're starting to think, hey, this is pretty neat. Maybe there's something here. Sunday comes around. We're last minute trying to get a pitch together, right? Trying to show our MVP on the screens, and we go up there and pitch. And what do you know? We were one of the finalists, one of the winners of that night. And for us, it was a really special event. And it was this feeling where, wow, before this weekend, I had no idea what it was like to be in the startup world. And now I can sort of understand this feeling. We ended up taking on that project. We continued it on. We ended up building the app out. You can go to the App Store and download Born Ready to this day. And it's just out there. And it's this idea that these ideas are so powerful. So please don't hold yourself back. Don't self-reject. Put yourself out there. It can be hard. It can be challenging. It can be even more challenging because we're remote. But just take that leap because you don't know where you're going to land. Maybe it's going to be someplace awesome. So just go for it.
I've got one. I really like that you shared that. I think everybody who's come to a Startup Weekend event, unless you came with somebody, had this sort of apprehension at the beginning. You're interested, you want to get involved, but if you don't already have an idea, you're not already signed up for one, or you didn't come with anyone, and now we're in a remote setting. But you experienced that too. How did you engage? Like, what did you find the best way to engage was when you to find the idea that you wanted to work on, even though yours didn't work out, and then meet people?
Yeah, this is something about it's like this is a chance for the people here to take a little bit of a leap, right? And taking those leaps can be scary. It can be a little bit daunting feeling. Let me tell you a little story about when we first launched Speako. And so this is actually way back in October 2018 when we launched the Speako app, and we were building the app, and we were really excited to start seeing a whole wave of downloads coming in. And when we launched it, we saw, whoops, there's no volume. No one's here downloading our app. What's going on? And it's this journey that you have to sort of just put yourself out there and see what happens. And for us, when we first launched Speako, there was not a lot of things that were happening for us. And so it took a lot to, okay, what do we do now? We listen to customers. You have to use some of these constraints to your advantage and say, okay, let's look at what our value proposition really is. How do we keep this really, really simple? How do we really make this about the customer and the user who's going to end up using this? And for us, it took us a while to do that. We started building the airplane wings of our airplane as we were trying to take off, right? So it's not an easy thing to do this. So go easy on yourselves when you're building your MVPs or testing out your ideas. There's a lot out there that can be confusing, but don't get too bogged down in this minutia. Keep it pretty high level, keep it simple as much as possible, and make it about the project. And you'll find people that will start to just gravitate towards that once you start to commit to something and show a little bit of passion into something. You'll start to just have people that will say, hey, that's a pretty neat idea. Let me start working on that. I think I can take this area of the project while you do this area. There's a lot of dividing and conquering that we can do to help each other out through this process. So I really encourage you all to think about this. Can you make this about the customer? And don't be afraid to fail, because failure, it sometimes forces you to think differently. So if you start getting feedback from those early customer conversations that I hope you all will be able to do, don't be afraid to pivot or change or focus really on something specific, and play your part on those teams.
Curdy Levy, Managing Director of Techstars Iowa, and we're in our second year. And so this is so fun to get the whole community together and really see people. from across Iowa, but also I have to say one of my teams that I was mentoring earlier, they've got members calling in from the UK, from Canada, and from India. So we've got quite the international flair going in Iowa. We're attracting people from all over, which is super fun. So, as these teams come together, that is a really interesting dynamic, right? So just thinking about as ideas are thrown out there and teams start jumping in, what was the initial, what was the thinking around that? Throw an idea out there and get people from different backgrounds to jump in. We're seeing it happen here today, but it just happens so naturally, which is incredible. What are some of the cool teams that you've seen come together, if you can remember any, that have maybe gotten together and stayed and created something?
Yeah, well, I'll just say it's interesting because everybody kind of, the first time usually you come to Startup Weekend, you come, just to learn. You don't really know what team you're going to join or necessarily how it's going to work. And a lot of us in the earlier days, then we started planning ahead for our next Startup Weekend, which I think a lot of anyone who's watching this can do, where you might form some team members early on, or maybe you get the same team together that you worked on another weekend, and you might even come in with an idea already halfway formed. And so I saw that happen with one of the unicorns that's come out of Startup Weekend called Rover, which is dog boarding and dog walking and dog services. And it was really neat to see that one, because there was a group of us from Seattle that were just really involved in would go to a lot of Startup Weekends or mentor or judge them. And sometimes we would jump back in and still participate. And one of those people was Greg Gottesman, who is a venture capitalist out of Seattle. And it was fun to see him. There weren't a lot of VCs coming to Startup Weekend in the early days, but Greg was one of them. There was a few kind of high-profile founders that had already had an exit, but Greg was one of the only VCs, and so he had this idea before the event started, but he really wanted to launch it. From what I saw at Startup Weekend, and so he came in, pitched the idea. Had a team form really quickly. And then, immediately after Startup Weekend, they made it a company, and they incorporated, and they were kind of off to the races. And they just IPO'd recently. Rover did, and so it's been a really interesting story to watch them. But it was the kind of story of going to Startup Weekend, having a great time learning about it, seeing what's possible, and then for the next one, planning ahead and kind of pre-planning for success.
What else should we give our teams kind of to send them off into the day to get stuff done as effectively as possible? They've got to finish up their development. They've got to put together their business models. They've got to really get some validation from the market. They have to put together their pitch decks, get ready to pitch. What are some of the other things that are maybe common, things people don't think about that we should tell them now?
I think that, blocking out some time before the pitch to actually practice, and maybe everybody's already done that, but, no matter where you are, there has to be a point where you just have to stop and then make sure that the story that you're telling really comes across, as far as the pain point, why you have that solution based on whatever customer discovery you have so far, and how you're thinking about this being a business or monetizing it, which none of this needs to be set in stone or concrete, but just practicing that story. Who on the team is going to share it? Are you going to switch off, and how does that transition happen? I think that part is so important, because the presentation is really what the judges are going to be looking at in the end.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So take time to practice. And to be honest, if you don't say the exact word that you thought you were supposed to say on that slide, remember you're telling a story. So as long as you've spent 24 hours doing this, right? As long as you know what topic you're talking about, you really can't get it wrong.
Startup Weekend Iowa Online. demo day celebration. As you can see, we've got our judging criteria we're going to run through quickly before we have our two teams pitch to reset the room. Now I'm starting to talk like we're on Clubhouse. We've got 5-minute pitches followed by 5-minute from our judges. We're actually going to take a quick commercial break, if you will. We're not going offline. They're going to jump in and do some conversations and deliberations in real time before bringing you back the results to award our top finisher for this weekend Startup Weekend event. Before we get started, I do want to take a quick look at some of our judging criteria. Jay, you've left validation up there, which is one of the primary areas that our entrepreneurs have been aware of as they've crafted their slide deck and their storytelling efforts. Jay, if you want to take a peek at the execution and design, we're also going to be looking at the type of prototyping. How quickly are we building something into reality in order to kind of bring that idea to life? And then last but not least, we're also going to look at the business model, right? How is the value prop going to lead to paying customers and the ultimate product market fit? And so were they talking with customers to do some discovery? Were they learning during those research processes? We had mentors that were talking about team dynamics right out of the gate. We talked about research and testing. We finished with a late night marketing conversation and then started the day with another renewed marketing discussion that led pretty quickly into sales. Our organizing team has been great. We'll talk about them here in a moment. But Kaylee Williams had a wonderful presentation, and then pitch practice, which was all sorts of fun, talking with different types of investors in order to really polish their storytelling into this 5-minute concise experience. Jay, if we want to keep on moving here, we'll talk a little bit about how this works. I've already shared logistics, so let's move on. These are our two teams and the order at which we will hear from them. Mismatch, I'm not going to give away any secrets. We'll hear from them first. And then Inktu will follow up around that 7:30, 7:35 mark. So that is our order for pitching.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. So I'm here to represent Team Mismatch, and I'll tell you what it's about right now. So think about the last time you put on socks. How was it? What was the feeling like? Exciting? Thrilling? You probably didn't think twice. Putting on socks has been the same monotonous routine for such a while. COVID-19 has actually increased the need for adventure and thrill that we want in our lives. So why not do it through socks? Actually, 50% of the customers that we spoke through our surveys agree that life can be made more exciting through socks. So introducing Mismatch. Socks that tell your fortune. What is Mismatch? A fun, whimsical, and original premium sock brand that is purposefully mismatched, with tarot cards printed on top of it. The tarot cards are a very popular activity in the US used to tell your fortune. There are approximately 78 in a pack with different things like the Empress, the Wizard, Magician, etc. And a combination of them can help you tell a fortune. Why not add a ritual story on top of this that can help you shake up your mornings? So the new ritual will allow users to go to a web app that will help them select the two socks that they've put on together and discover their tarot fortune for the day. So the market opportunity that we've thought about and the way that that led us to socks is the US market represents about $9.3 billion of it, which is approximately 20% of the global market, which is about 47 billion. And it's currently growing at about 6.7%. Thinking about the psychic market itself by focusing and targeting on them, because they're just they represent about 2.2 billion in terms of people accessing psychic services. Given all these numbers, we assume we have about a $60 million opportunity to tap into. So I'll give you a quick demo of the solution that we have. We're planning to sell the Mismatch socks through Shopify, a online e-commerce platform. We have built that, but I assume given the pandemic, everybody has done some sort of e-commerce shopping, and I'm not going to go through that. What I would like to focus on specifically is the ritual. This is how the sock ritual is going to work. Step 1, you pick a pair of your socks from the mismatch rack in the morning. Step 2, you put them on. Step 3, you see what the universe holds. It takes you to a platform like this. You select the sock that you put on your left foot, the sock that you put on your right foot, and you see what your fortune is. Hard work and sacrifice is paying off today. We are also using reverse marketing strategies here where they're able to go back to the site and potentially use some promotions that can help them go purchase the product. So the go-to-market strategy that we have for what we're thinking about is starting from a prototype and marketing platform by just using a Kickstarter and a direct-to-consumer thing. We'll connect with suppliers that can help us do print on demand, which will be a little expensive initially, but it'll help us test the market and validate our idea. Eventually, when we get to our final market penetration, we plan to expand our suppliers to international markets in Asia, such as Bangladesh, Vietnam, or Korea, and help reduce our unit costs, increasing our profitability. Some of the ways we intend to reach our customers is through traditional D2C channels of advertising and marketing, Facebook, Reddit, etc. But another option that we've considered is subscribing with other clothing brands that have subscriptions and adding our socks within them as well. Using other promotion strategies like marketing referrals, BOGOs, buy two, get one free, and then the reverse marketing strategy you saw on our website is also an opportunity. The way that we're thinking about expanding on this is actually building more new tarot illustrations. Tarots, the 78 cards I had mentioned earlier, they tend to be static. However, the illustrations that represent it, as you may have seen through some of the images on the slides, they modify. By adding new tarot illustrations in our socks, we will be able to expand our offerings to the customers. Another element is that we're also gamifying the socks so that customers will have rarer socks to purchase, rarer socks that can help improve their fortune, and so they would be able to purchase it more. Finally, we also considering licensing it with external partnerships, either for popular fiction such as Harry Potter or Pokemon, or partnering with sports franchises like NHL and NBA. I'm from Canada and Toronto specifically. The Leafs have not won the Stanley Cup yet, so I would love to see a Stanley Cup and a Leafs sock pair up together, and hopefully we can potentially win. Just want to introduce my team that I've been working with over the weekend. All of these people have been great, and startup weekend was amazing. Thank you.
Hey, and the alarm is just going off. It's like you've done that before. Way to go. Very nice presentation. Appreciate the wonderful storytelling and right on the clock. Woo! That was nice. We have about 5 minutes. I will go ahead and start that time, allow the judges to ask some questions and go back and forth with our entrepreneur. I'll start that 5 minutes now.
All right, I might go ahead and jump in with a quick question. As you talked about the market, the target market that you're going after, you talked about the old sock market, but just because everybody wears socks, not everybody is going to buy from you. So could you just reiterate for me what your actual target market is?
For sure. So yes, there are people who buy socks, and there are people who also tend to go get psychic services. So the target market that we're considering are people who want psychic services related things like tarot cards that are interested in it, are also potentially going to buy socks, as well as on top of that, want to mismatch their socks. Based on our customer surveys, about 33% of our customers actually responded that they do mismatch their socks. So factoring all these three different factors, we're trying to find that perfect customer that is interested in all these three things.
Thank you.
To build off that a little bit, I'm interested a little bit more in that target market and also specifically the tarot cards. So I think that's an interesting concept, but tarot in some cases people can be a little iffy about, whereas maybe astrology and horoscope is maybe seems more safe, because sometimes the tarot cards can be scary. Because I noticed you said maybe even socks for little ones. So would you ever consider branching out beyond tarot cards, or specifically the tarot cards, or could it go into astrology or other places beyond that initial place for fortunes?
So within fortunes, we are open to it. Like originally, we're thinking of tarot cards just because of the number of tarot options that you have. 78 cards, given 2 feet, you can just kind of get the many combinations and permutations of it. We are open to kind of expanding based on what we see the response from the market is. We're talking about like mismatched theme socks for like popular fiction, like Harry Potter and Pokemon. But even specifically, we can go into astrology, like, the different stars that you have and maybe the ways the stars and the moon and Venus line up. That is something we can kind of explore based on the customer responses in the future.
So I want to ask a question. How do you set yourself apart from other people? Because I used to be very fascinated with the late President Bush choices of socks. So how do you compete with a company like the one he chose all the time? So what makes you guys more unique?
For sure. So the specific element is, so there are two things. First of all, there are mismatched socks. Actually, let me take a step back. Premium socks, there are a lot of competitors out there. A lot of people do buy patterned socks. Mismatched socks is a less competitive market, so it's a much more bigger opportunity for us. And then by focusing specifically on the tarot cards segment, we are able to kind of get into that. Tarot, we haven't, based on our research, found anybody else who's specifically making tarot card socks. People are making tarot card illustrations. We actually saw a $40,000 Kickstarter campaign that happened just very recently. So by combining these two, we are hoping to stand out from the rest of the competition.
Could you tell us a little bit about the team? What are the roles of the different members of the team? I saw you had the names, and what did they contribute to this project?
For sure, I can walk through each person. I'll start with Mason first. Mason was a product marketer, and he helped us kind of think about the marketing channel strategy. Nick was he actually switched teams to us a little bit later in the middle of the weekend, and it was amazing to kind of get his thoughts and think about how he would buy socks, because he had kids and he was able to kind of help us with that, how his kids tend to mismatch it and sort of customer strategy behind that. Nipun helped us with a bit of the customer survey and also doing the customer research. Kuhila and Nova were the developers. They helped us build the web app that were online. And Suruchi was also able to kind of do the market opportunity sizing and give us the analysis of what the different numbers were and how we can kind of enter this market.
Thank you.
Well, if we have just a few seconds, what's the one you want us to take away from your pitch?
Mismatched socks will help you make it fun, change up the morning routine, and the whole ritual will just make life after COVID a little bit better.
I have one question, and it's just kind of through my experience. So I know Jill mentioned this, like the horoscope angle, but Spotify does like video today, and you can hear an audio message of what your horoscope is. So have you guys played around with the tarot cards? Like, what are all the different ways that people can experience that so it makes it sticky to come back to mismatch?
To be honest, I have not considered that opportunity yet. So that is something definitely I would have to look into. It's really interesting. I did not know about the Spotify giving you the astrology recommendation. The web app was just the things that we initially thought about just as a way, because customers can go, even potentially making a progressive web app that's on their phone, just something is there. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to kind of see some other strategies that we can kind of give the fortune to the customer based on their socks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thank you.
Imagine sitting with your favorite tiny humans, searching for a book to read, and they notice something. And with their eyes wide, they look up and ask, why do none of the characters look like me? At that moment, you realize they don't see themselves as the heroes of their own stories. And you decide to right this wrong, but you're faced with a massive challenge that many people don't overcome. I know this story because it's mine. I want to introduce you to my little sister, Nayela and Una. The good news is my story has a happy ending, but many people struggle to put together their talents to bring their stories to life. The problem that we're looking to solve is that self-publishing authors struggle to find affordable, quality art for their stories, and illustrators are looking for portfolio and revenue opportunities in an increasingly competitive landscape. We're looking to start with self-publishing authors and illustrators with children's books with experience between 1 to 5 years and trying to advance in their careers. Hi, I'm Maurice Davis, one of the co-founders of Ink2, and we are an online platform that matches illustrators and authors together so they can build their story. Our customers are the authors and the illustrators' early stage careers that are looking to grow and advance. During our customer discovery process, we found 4 interesting things. The authors wanted to pay for illustrations outright. They were looking for easier ways to find illustrators. Both the author and the illustrator wanted a vetting process for quality, and both were looking for a central place to find resources to help them. Here's how the process works. It's so simple. Think Fiverr for authors and illustrators only.
Yep. Thank you, Maurice. So we understood the competitors in the landscape, and we tried to come up with the best competitive landscape. And the chart you can see here shows our positioning in the service-based and collaborative work quadrant. So we have Fiverr, Upwork, 99design, Artists and Writers Forever. But where they lack, we try to fill the gap. We're trying to focus on collaboration between illustrators and authors, and we want that to be in a service-based, equitable manner that isn't just a one-time project, money-based fee. We conducted a SWOT analysis, and we understood that our main strengths lie in the collaboration and the marketing services we provide. The weaknesses are the barriers to entry. It's a new approach in a relatively old market. Opportunities, we want to focus on children's book to begin with, so that gives us a niche focus, and that's a good start. And in terms of threats, the market size is relatively not as much that could sustain the business. The business model is fairly simple, as outlined in the diagram here. Authors will be connected to illustrators via Ink2. Authors will provide illustrators with a chance to increase their portfolio and gain some revenue streams for their illustrations. Illustrators will provide authors with a chance to share their illustrations and realize them in a book. Ink2, in between, will provide matchmaking services for authors and training and certification for illustrators. The pricing model outlined here will be explained more by Maurice.
So what we'll do is we'll charge for education services in order to fill the gaps for both the illustrators looking to advance their careers and the authors looking to fill their understanding of how to publish, formatting assistance for the authors and illustrators looking to push their books out self-publishing, and then marketing services for any author or illustrator that's looking to grow their revenue.
The cost broke down here include $4,600 for total cost. $3,200 of that will go into developing the website and the platform, and $400 is reserved for legal and professional fees, which will include writing the terms of service and a privacy policy. The go-to-market strategy, we only started yesterday, and that's when the team and ideation started. Today, we had to finish up the presentation for demo day. By May, we want to develop the MVP and start user testing. June, beta launch and marketing. August, tracking KPI set and pivot if needed. And in December, we want to just acknowledge the progress we had. And this is the amazing team that brought everything together. And we wanted to thank you for sitting through the presentation and for all your support in the startup weekend. It was great. Thank you. Hey, Ben, it's number 13.
Yeah. Number 13 it is. Thank you for putting me on the spot. That is exactly right. We've been calling them muted moments throughout the weekend, and we've been keeping tallies, and that's 13. So, Peter, I told you weren't alone, my friend. I have so many kind things to say about everyone watching and everyone participating this evening. What I was seriously saying, though, was nice storytelling. I will restart the clock. Thank you. And go ahead, judges. Looking forward to hearing how you interact with our entrepreneurs.
I can go fast. First of all, thank you for addressing something that affects me personally. I have a friend of mine who happens to be a white lady, and I'm sorry we have to talk about race, but every birthday, she's always looking for a card that shows a Black woman and a white woman together. So you guys are onto something. I hope that you consider also venturing into just birthday cards. But I was kind of a little bit impressed with your work, but I have another question. How do you address just the issue of promoting your work, especially now when not so many people it's very difficult to say this. As a person of color, how are you going to sell your work and who's going to buy from you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll grab that one. So what we found throughout our research was that the majority of people publishing children's books, only about 5% were actually doing it for the sake of making money. Most other people were doing it for other reasons. And I'll use myself as an example. I didn't really care how many books were sold. I just wanted it to exist and know that I did my part to make a difference. And so there's a large part of the segment with children's books where specifically they just have other things outside of looking to drive revenue or make sales.
So along the same, go ahead.
I had a question just about the business model. How did you arrive at the numbers that you did? For instance, the legal fees. To me, that seemed a little low, but what was the process for arriving at those numbers?
Yep. Do you want me to take that, Maurice?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sweet. So based on legal fees, they're the ones based in Canada, in particular Vancouver. So it's just using services that lawyers provide and some sample websites to give us the terms of service and privacy policies, and or in case we need a session of consultation to see if there's any other document we should prepare. Yeah, ultimately towards a final launch, other costs will be incurred, but that's our first estimation.
So I have a question. What do authors do today? Because do they go to their local library to try to find an illustrator? Do they just ask around because someone has artist friends? Can you talk about that and like how you guys diagnosed that this was a problem?
Yeah. So currently, most authors are kind of doing a combo of what you're talking about now. They're looking for referrals through people that they know, and then they're leveraging platforms like Fiverr, Upwork, and or Facebook groups in order to try to facilitate or locate someone that kind of makes sense. And so how we kind of came up with that this is a problem. Well, number one, I've dealt with it. And then as I was looking, noticing that other people were dealing with it, but I'm in 5 or 6 other author illustrator groups. And this is one of the biggest problems is knowing who to go to for your style of illustration that you're looking for. And while Facebook is great, it's not really the platform designed for that. So it makes that process a little more cumbersome.
To go a little bit off of what Diane was saying. Go ahead. All right. I'll just jump in real fast. The question that I had was for the buy-in that you have for people. As you are more and more coming up as far as the illustrators and the writers, and you were talking about groups that you've been involved in, what is to prevent somebody else from expanding their existing platform to encompass some of this?
To be honest,
sorry.
Go ahead. You can take it, Paul.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask a clarification on that. So you mean why wouldn't Fiverr do the same thing or Upwork? Yeah. They could totally do it. Yeah. They could totally do it. Same as like any other startup's biggest fears, like Google or Amazon might do it. But the way I see it, it's not their business model. They have a self-sustaining business model that's been working for months and years. So I see no reason for them to pursue it, at least right now.
Okay. This is Peter, and I have a question about the story started out, and I thought what you were going to say is it was all about having more diverse illustrations, and which it is. But then I thought I heard you say, and maybe I misheard it, that the volume was not the issue. It was about just getting these things, getting children's books published for maybe smaller distribution, which is kind of interesting to me because it seems like a mismatch to your original, your original hypothesis, which said, you can't get good illustrations that represent a diverse population. Is that what I understood, or did I understand that incorrectly?
Yeah. So what I think you're probably saying is there's a couple of problems with the current system. Number one, it's not designed. It's not facilitating a smooth process from the moment that I realize I want to create a children's story throughout the end when it's ready to be published. I would say for anyone that has access to resources, this is a lot easier because you have connections and you have resources in order to buy or to facilitate a relationship. And that usually impacts our minority communities more in the sense that they don't have access to the same level of resources. So yes, it is impacting minority communities, but it's a universal problem across the fact of like, how do I know where to go and what am I supposed to do, and making sure that I'm getting a good product that I can be proud of.
Welcome back. I'm nervous. I was not part of these conversations, so I do not know what the results are going to be. We have so many fun prizes for both of these teams. For some of you who might be curious, originally they were split into groups so that each team could take a package and kind of choose their favorite. Imagine all these digital and physical prizes basically sitting on a virtual table. We're about to celebrate in our after party as a group, and they're going to be able to kind of virtually come up and grab one of those prizes, and the first place team gets to choose first. So we'll go back and forth. Everyone wins. The experience itself was a gift. Nonetheless, we're still going to add to that and make it a little extra fun. Before we get started with our judges, I want to give this jacket away to Mohammed Terrer. He lit up the social media landscape. Kinsey, I'm happy to send you a gift as well, just because you were also making a ruckus out on Twitter. But Mohammed was a neat story. Over in Iowa City, have really got to know him over some of the social audio conversations. A little timid about participating in a startup weekend for the first time, but jumped in feet first and has really helped his team build with his development skills, and stayed up late, took a nap, and that's about it. And so you not only were a good player in our little fun giveaway, but you really showed some neat enthusiasm and dedication to this weekend's activity. All right. So I'm not sure who is going to deliver the news. Jay, I'm not sure either if we even have the slide to celebrate our winner. But I suppose if we can get somewhat of like a moment. All right. Who's gonna deliver our winner for the first virtual startup weekend Iowa online event? And the winner between Mismatch and Ink2 is
we just wanted to draw it out a little bit longer.
Love it. Oh, second place winner goes to the Ink2 family. Congratulations. And our first place winner was Mismatch. Let's give them a big round of applause. This is how we do that virtually. All right. Congratulations to both of our teams. Both really showed a lot of grit working throughout the entire evening. I know we've gone a little overtime tonight, but appreciate you sticking around. Before we close, I'd like to invite the judge or any final thoughts to feel free to share those, and then I'll wrap us up. If there's nothing, we can continue to move into our after party. I know people are ready to celebrate as well. Any closing thoughts from the panel?
I just want to say it took us a long time as we were deliberating. So all of the teams should be proud of themselves and what they put together. And I encourage both teams to continue reaching out to the resources across the state to really move these ideas forward. I think we have some great opportunities here.
Absolutely. Any one of us on this panel, I think, would be happy to connect with you. And to echo Lisa, it was a hard choice. It was tough, which is why, sorry, we were part of the reason we're running late. So congratulations to both teams.
I would just add too that the slides and the level of the pitching was really great. I've worked with a lot of student entrepreneurs, a lot of what I say adult entrepreneurs, and you guys really did a great job to both teams, so Mismatch and Inc. too. So I think you should feel proud too, and just the level of creativity you guys put in. Design, I know that was something we judged on too, so great job.
Excellent, very excellent. Given the time that you had and the, again, the level of detail, very, very good. And both, I think, can move forward. I really do think you could move forward and create a business.
Very nice. Very nice. Nancy, any final thoughts, my friend?
I think they're both fantastic. Thank you for the work that you put in. I think this is a great idea to just spend a whole weekend to do something fun like this. Thank you.